Um, well, obviously, we're all very pleased and keen to see some voices in Westminster with the Reform Party's recent success in the general election. But as usual, it's only a relatively new party, despite it having a very experienced leader. And unfortunately, Reform has had to recover from various things that Richard Tice has said in the past regarding the rollout. I'm careful with my vocabulary here because I know it goes on Facebook. Regarding the rollout and Ukraine, he's made some faux pas, let's say. Now, I've never joined any political parties because I like to keep neutral because I see my role as trying to explain fairly complex political issues without droning on too much so that the layman can understand. And fortunately, that does seem to have had an effect. Reform have done exceptionally well because people are so fed up. They were fed up with the Tories because they're not real Tories. You and I know that. We've had a socialist economy for 14 years. Even um, Rob Liddon will admit that in his emails. So whilst we've had a Tory government, the economy is handled by the Bank of England, basically. The Chancellor is a figurehead. And they've, they've been, they're mainly Blairites. That's what we're up against. So it's good to see Reform have finally got a foot in the door. However, it's under attack, I think, all the time. And what happened on Sunday morning, well, Saturday, there was a march that's the media are labelling up supporting Tommy Robinson. But the march was organised months ago by Tommy Robinson's media company, Urban Scoop. It wasn't just about supporting Tommy Robinson at all. It was a gathering of people who were disenfranchised from politics so that they could get together, you know, touch base with people they've never met before, perhaps contacts through social media, or reignite old contacts who feel like us. We want lower energy prices, we want better services, and we see our money pouring out overseas. We're absolutely fed up with it. But these people that complain about these things are now labelled all far right. And after the Southport incident, it really is an insult because we aren't all far right. Tommy Robinson supporters are not all far right. They just see him creating something they can latch onto, which is a gathering. It happened on Saturday, it went without incident basically. There was free entertainment, beautiful dancing girls, singers, monologues, speeches. Everybody gathered, over 100,000 people gathered. Um, Obviously, they would have been mainly Reform voters, although there were some Tories there actually. The media um, blank it out, and then the ones that discuss it never discuss it for how it is. They never say there was a gathering of like-minded people who were fed up with the government. They call it the Tommy Robinson. They have to try and use his actual name as an insult. And then what happens politically? Figures get afraid to be associated on any level with Tommy. I think Tommy Robinson's a threat to the media. And when I say that, I think because of some of his documentaries are so good that it's what they should be doing. It's what the BBC and Channel 4 and ITV should be churning out, but they're not because we've got no investigative reporters anymore. So, unfortunately, um, after the Saturday rally, Camilla Tominey, who I normally think is quite challenging to political figures, I think slipped. I think she let her standards go. She was talking to Richard Tice about a number of issues, and then she brought up the Tommy Robinson rally. And that's how she labelled it. The far right. That's how she labelled it. Completely out of order in my book. Um, Richard Tice, who I'm not particularly that fond of, um, looked flustered to me. He looked red in the face and flustered. And he said, we have nothing to do with them. He was trying to de-associate the party from Tommy Robinson because Tommy Robinson's on a watch list and he's been arrested under the Anti-Terrorism Act. I mean, the last thing a political party wants with MPs with seats is associating with that. And people don't understand the pressure that Reform are under. That's my view. So Tice, yet again, did it in a form of words that was unacceptable. And they wouldn't have done it to me. They wouldn't have captured me like that. But Ty's turned around and said, we don't want anything to do with that lot. That lot. Now, when Ty says that, he means the extremists that will be part of that movement, the very extremists that will still, they have to go somewhere. They still live here. They're still paying their taxes. But with that one comment, he did what everybody else does. He throws people like you and me under the bus because we probably voted, well, I voted Reform, and we're not far right and we don't deserve that lot title. But it's a throwaway comment under pressure on a live interview. That's then been dissected by various media commentators on social media, and it's upset an awful lot of Reform voters. It's upset me, but I'm prepared to think, what a wazzock. Brush it under the carpet and get on with getting on, because I think it's important to grow from the 5 that we have. That's the way I see it. The media are at fault. If Camilla Tominey had been interviewing me and she'd said that to me, I would have turned around to her in her position and said, hang on a minute, why have you got me on the carpet about Tommy Robinson? Why don't you have him on your show? Because all his supporters watch your channel. All his supporters watch GB News. They don't watch Sky. They don't watch the BBC. They watch you. Why haven't you given him space to speak? Why are you asking me? What's it got to do with me? My supporters decide to go out on a march for another person that they also support, and you're trying to somehow link me into that. What's it got to do with me? And I would have had her like that. That's how I would have handled it. And I would have said that you're actually insulting a lot of people who went to that march because they are not far right. I know dog groomers, retired firemen, policemen, accountants, so many different people went to that march. All different backgrounds, Sikhs, Hindus. Come on, Buddhists. 3 Buddhists went that I know.
I think there's something perhaps here, if I may suggest, you miss a little bit. And it's something that's easily missed because, I mean, I had 10 years in politics. I was a business manager. No, like you, I'm a business person in the city, and I came into politics very late in life in order to try and get Brexit done, or get Brexit. That was my background, and not dissimilar to yours.
Yeah.
But what I think I need to say is you have to understand that people like Tice are establishment figures. They're not in any way renegades or radicals. They are part of the system. Tice was in favor of jabs. He was in favor of lockdowns. He was photographed just before the election supporting the war in the Ukraine. This man is establishment. And his goal will be some form of gong from the establishment. He's a wealthy man. What doesn't he have? What would he give his eye teeth for? A knighthood. So he goes along with the flow. So he says the right things if you push the right buttons. So he can look back and say, I've never supported Tommy Robinson. I'm anti-far right, just look what a clever boy I am. Gimme my knighthood. Sir Robert Tice. Yeah. I know these people, June. I've had drinks with them. I've been in the pub with them. I've had dinner with a lot of these people. They're not what you think they are. And neither, with one or two exceptions in Reform, one or two exceptions of their MPs, they all piss in the same pot. They're not what anybody thinks they are. And if anybody thinks they're the future and they're the next page, all they are is a ginger group of the Tory party. And they're saying the right things now in order to try and gain favour with those. They want the vote of those hundreds of thousands of people demonstrating in London, getting together in London. But they're too stupid to realise that they just pissed off 50,000 voters. People who might have come forward to stand at local elections, people who might have joined the party, have now been pissed off. That's because Tice has no political experience. He doesn't understand these matters. And all he is a dyed-in-the-wool, hardcore, centre-left Tory. Wake up, everybody watching this clip.
Godfrey, let me ask you something. With Tice, you say he's not politically savvy. Surely he should have had some experience by now. I mean, he has been around long enough. He's had a good education, so you can't blame that. He's articulate. Why does he have to be so clumsy? I mean, waving that flag, it stood there pointing at that Ukraine sign. I think it was some sign going into Ukraine. I mean, that was like a red rag to a bull to me. Thinking, how can you not know what's really going on? How can he not know? So you must assume that he does know. So we can't make excuses that he's not politically savvy. He's doing what he wants. I'm sorry, he just tickled me when he said, "Where's my knighthood?" I think that's so close to the truth. And the trouble is, everybody sits there, I include myself in this, thinking, how do we get change? We can only get change from people in Westminster. But how do we do it? I mean, you've just said you've been in politics a long time. You've been with these characters and they've been in politics a long time. And let's say we're 20 years down the road. Where are we? Where are we? Where are we? What do we do? I can't see starting another party is any use. I don't actually believe in political parties anyway. That's my thing. I think we should be able to vote for a representative that can stand alone, that is independent, and there should always be a free vote in Parliament on any issues. And I'm in a group, I think you might be in it actually. It's called Direct Democracy. It's a WhatsApp group about how to steer the ship towards direct democracy. And one of the few saving graces of reform is they would support direct democracy, which is where the big stuff like HS2 or forced mandates for medical treatment would be back to the public. The only trouble with that, of course, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, is that you need an honest media for that to work, because if we had direct democracy during the lockdowns, everyone would have voted for everybody else to get jabbed. And that's not what I want. So how do we create a political landscape where we have more say? How do we do it?
I think what we need to do now, how we get there, I'm not sure. But I've just been reading funny enough, I've just been reading a biography of Edward III. Very interesting, very enlightening in the 13th, 1400s, the revision of democracy and parliament, so on and so forth. Leaving that aside, history always repeats itself in something of a mutated form. The problem that we have at the moment, I would argue, is we don't have representative democracy. And I think everybody, I don't think anybody could conceivably not agree with that. It's the same in North America. You vote red or blue. You've got the choice of two chumps. Here we have the choice of two complete hopeless losers. One loser goes out and another psycho comes in. So this is a sort of problem that we have. Now, what I would suggest is a way of changing it, and of course you could only change it via Parliament, but which is less than helpful. And you come back full circle. In order to represent your constituency, I live in Howden and Halton Price. That is mine. It's Tory to its fingernails. You know, that's what it is. It's Tory. People think if they didn't vote Tory in my constituency, they would simply drop dead. There'd be no argument about it. They'd just simply fall over and die. And that's what they believe. And of course, it's quite a rural community. And of course, Nigel Farage got a very good saying. Bless him, I always liked it. Said, never underestimate the stupidity of the rural Conservative. They are mind-bogglingly stupid. And of course, all this is true. So what do you do? And I think it's quite a blueprint is quite simple. I would suggest that in order for representative democracy to work, and it can work, and that is if you stand in your constituency, you should be able to say, first of all, I live here. It's not fake. I live here. I haven't just moved in, for a couple of months. That's bullshit. That's got to go. Because in our, not here in my constituency, but in Hull East, I think, or it was, anyway, it doesn't matter, some years ago, the Conservative Party central office, who controls who actually stands, flew a chap in from Scotland to stand for East Yorkshire, when there's been a perfectly competent, articulate and good lawyer who'd been a supporter of the Conservative Party for over a decade, and he was booted out. We did not want a mate of somebody in Smith Square who we could barely understand. You know, we didn't want him in Yorkshire. So anyway, because nobody voted for him. It's bullshit. So what we need is, you've got to live in the constituency, genuinely live in the constituency. And that means you've got to show residence for at least 3 years. I don't think that's unreasonable.
No, good idea.
So then it should be illegal under our constitution to sport any form of emblem for anybody. So it should be not, I've got a red rosette, I've got a blue rosette. That's bullshit. Because what you end up is, like we always do here, your backbenchers, and now, and of course with this government, your cabinet, are full of people you wouldn't employ to clean the car. So they're absolutely dire. And of course, their strings are easily pulled by big pharma, big business, BlackRock. Just the same in American Congress, incidentally. This is no different. So you don't have representative democracy. So you should say, right, I'm standing for Lancashire East or wherever your constituency is. You should be able to say, well, I'm June Slater. I live here. I've got a business background. I believe in the following main points. Never mind on the fringes. These are the 5 things that I believe in. People go, right, okay, well, that makes sense. They'd vote for you. Look at some of the people who get elected in the Labour Party. If they didn't have a red rosette, they would lose their deposit. But they've got a red rosette, so they actually get elected. This is absolutely quite stupid. Now, then we would have, and I had this conversation with somebody the other day on my it was David Cutton. It takes a different view, although I admire David Cutton. It means, he said, yes, well, of course, people will form alliances when they get into Parliament. Of course they will. I understand that. I'm completely stupid. I understand that. But it means that the people joining those parties or those pressure groups or those organisations within the parliamentary system would actually think a little bit like the constituents who put them there.
Exactly.
Now they don't do that. And so consequently, we cannot have representative democracy if your choice is blue or red. Imagine when you go to a curry house, you get curry. You know, okay, it's chicken madras or it's meat madras or it's fish or it's something like that. But it's a curry. It's a bloody curry. That's in a curry house. Now, there's no point in ordering egg and chips or roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, because you're in a curry house. Now, what we mean, we've got a menu which is a curry house. You can have anybody you like, as long as it's red or blue. In other words, you can have anything on this wonderful menu you've got in this restaurant, as long as it's curry. You might not like curry, you know. So consequently, there is no choice, and there's nobody. And of course, we're getting an extremely, through the system, somebody who's played the political game as a junior at university, bits and pieces, who comes into life at 21 or 22 years old with no experience of life, no experience at all. And so consequently, they're utterly useless. Now, if we actually put real representatives of our constituents into Parliament, yes, of course, they'd form groups within that. Of course they would. And that's not unhealthy. It just means that when they go back to get re-elected, which is the one thing that worries them all the time, they have to say, what did I do? What did you do? Well, you reneged on the 5. You only said 5 things, and you reneged on 3 of them. It doesn't matter whether it's Ukraine, high taxation, it's compulsory jabbing, whatever it is. And so this is what we do. So it can be done. The blueprint is really simple, almost a stroke of a pen. But I would argue, and this is where I know you'll start bouncing up and down as well, we live in a parliamentary democracy and a constitutional monarchy. It should come from the king, as it came from King Edward III, when he made some big changes to try and get some representation to save his own skin. And I would suggest that King Charles III should actually say, putting my people first, not Klaus Schwab, not fake science, not net zero, not let's save the planet, when you've got 9 monster houses and castles and Aston Martin, a private jet, you prat. And he should say, now, just a minute, we should have in a parliamentary, not as a constitutional monarchy. I will not deal with any of this until we have representative democracy. Even if people who say hang King Charles III. Let's hang him now. That's democracy. You've got to live with it. You can't have this fake system that we have.
But it's gone, like we have a constitutional monarchy that's supposed to be so much better than a republic. But it isn't. We seem to have got the worst end of both. We've got the constitutional monarchy that's not working in our favour because he's too busy with global matters, net zero, Klaus Schwab, Jacinda Ardern and all the rest of them. And we've ended up with tyranny. How the hell did we get here? How did we get a man who can dish out prison sentences with people who put tweets and Facebook posts out, who haven't done anything violent in their life, haven't done anything against the law, apart from parking tickets probably, and they get refused bail and stuck in jail, and yet the people who beat up coppers at Manchester Airport and that vile Labour, was he a councillor, who asked for people's heads chopping off?
Yes, Labour councillor.
Yeah, Labour councillor.
Where's he gone? Nothing happened.
It's not going to trial till January.
And he'll be let off.
He's walking around.
I know, it's completely crazy. And we can't go on with this. And of course, it started with the educational system. You have to go back a few years, a few decades now. So the principles of English law, that should be, starting with Magna Carta, moving through the 1688 Bill of Rights, the 1688 Toleration Acts, the development of Parliament, a constitutional monarchy, what is it? And if you look at a very successful constitutional monarchy, of course, you look back to Queen Victoria, who they didn't they didn't dare go in front of Queen Victoria and say, will you sign this, which was a load of bullshit, fake science or compulsory medication. She wouldn't have had it. She'd have said, no, one doesn't want it. We don't want it. Bugger off. Now, of course, they sign anything, they do anything, but they don't care because they're pulling behind the strings. So, and of course, a republic wouldn't help because you'd get another bunch of muppets, wouldn't you? And they'd get another idiot. Look at all the people with presidents. Oh boy, does that work? Not really, does it? So what we need is a constitution. There's nothing wrong with a constitutional monarchy. It's just that the Windsors aren't the right monarchs because they're all thick. I mean, I don't know. Bring back the Plantagenets, I don't know. But certainly we can't go on as we are. I think, to be honest, we should have some sort of electoral system that they had in the House of Hanover. And if we had to have a Windsor, we'd have had Princess Anne. Not all the other muppets that lie down. At least she's got a bit of common sense about her. It's not my cup of tea because she's not a boozer, but she used to be my honorary colonel when I was in the army. Actually, by the way, I prefer my honorary colonels to be pissheads. But there we are. But at least she's got some common sense, and nobody else seems to have. So the whole thing is in danger. The principles of English law are in danger. The Constitution, and we do have one, it's just not written like the American one, is in danger. But even if you've got an American Constitution, look at the American Constitution constructed by great brains like Thomas Jefferson. It's been abandoned. It's been completely abandoned. And so that doesn't work. Perhaps we even need to go back to some sort of amazing new system of democracy. This will get me into trouble probably. A democracy that was, that was the whole ethos, the demos in ancient Athens, where it was democratic, but you didn't get a vote, basically, and what the Americans would say, and I love some of their phraseology. The Americans, you don't get a vote unless you've got skin in the game.
Yeah.
So you don't have 6 million public sector workers taking the piss, getting a vote, because they're just going to vote for another 5%, aren't they? Yeah, of course they would. They would do. And index-linked pensions, and all the rest of it goes with the public sector, which gets more and more bloated and was bloated under the Conservatives. As you know, the last 6 or 7 years of the Conservatives, another 400,000 public sector workers. And it goes on and it's on. We can't all be civil servants, can we? We can't all be idiot school teachers who don't know shit from clay. We can't all be this. Sooner or later, somebody has to make a buck to pay the tax, to pay for the things that people seem to be in love with, like a national health service, which doesn't work at all, but people love it for some reason I don't know. And so it goes on. So the whole thing needs sweeping away. And people say, oh, no, you can't do that. Well, but that's exactly what we had. When we had the greatest empire possibly the world's ever seen, That's how it went. We had a constitutional monarchy, we had a parliamentary democracy, but you didn't get a vote because you were 18. What kind of system? Explain that to a man from Mars who comes down and say, well, who gets a vote then? Who votes in this system? You've got a birth certificate which shows that you're 18, and somehow that qualifies you to elect a government. It's rubbish. Oh, and by the way, if you're Irish, you can still vote as well. The Irish can vote. What kind of system are we running? And of course, if you just got off a boat 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, you get a vote in no time at all as well. If you don't have skin in the game, and when I say skin in the game, are you a taxpayer in the private sector? That's what pays the shots. If you're not, no vote. And if you really want to vote, resign your job in the public sector and get a job in the private sector, the wealth creating sector. That's the key.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. I never thought of it that way, because what I can see as a taxpayer that's in the private sector is the trouble with what's happened, I think, in recent times. We've been comfortably apathetic, and apathy only needs mediocrity to survive. So we've had mediocrity in government. We've had what looked like Tories, because they've got blue badges from Cameron and the coalition right back then, even right back to John Major. It all seems like we're in the hands of the Tories, but really we're not. We're in the hands of a set of liberals who never left the coalition. So we've had this socialist economy run by the Bank of England. It was the Tories who gave the Bank of England independence to act as it sees fit and then inform the government. And then they've got all these internal bodies like the, I can never remember what it's called. It's with the ONS and the OCB, not OCB, is it? That adjudicate itself, so that if there's any dissent from government, they can wade it off. So really, even though she's numb as a plank, Rachel Reeves, it doesn't matter who's the Chancellor, because the Bank of England's running the show and they're leftists, they're Blairites. So
you're quite correct. You're quite correct. They brought in all these quangos which control everything. And of course, the thing is, the quangos who regulate, the regulators, you have this problem with all these regulators that they're outside the system. Was it quote ipsos custodes, who will guard the guardians with these people? So consequently, you're trial by jury, your presumption of innocence. Try suggesting presumption of innocence to the tax man. And he'll just take your money directly out of your bank account and say, well, sue me.
Yeah. Exactly.
So the whole system's completely broken down, and I grasshopper minding around a bit, you will probably be a bit too young to remember the Charles Lawton in The Winslow Boy. They ran it again in the West End, The Winslow Boy, when a boy was accused of theft at Dartmouth, the Royal Naval College. You remember? And he took it to the House of Lords. The father took it to the House of Lords. And there's that wonderful scene with Charles Lawton actually with his eyepiece flashing it's marvelous. It's well worth watching again. It's crumbly black and white, but I would make that compulsory in every fifth form in the land.
Yeah.
So they've got to understand it. They must understand what their birthright is. Their birthright in the matters of English law, constitutional monarchy, and parliamentary democracy. And habeas corpus and all these things, because most of what is going on today is illegal. It's illegal here and it's illegal in North America. You cannot, under English law, common law, incarcerate an ill 60-year-old man who has not committed a violent act. It's illegal under our Constitution. He's not allowed to do that. But of course, Tony Blair corrupted the entire system. So we now have a Supreme Court, not a House of Lords as the final court of appeal. And the House of Lords is now full of Liberal Democrat failed MPs. There's nobody there. They've taken all my aristocratic mates out. Admittedly, they weren't the sharpest pencils in the box, but they had the country's interests at heart. Now we've just got a bunch of chancers, a bunch of losers, chancers, ne'er-do-wells, and parasites. So all the protection that we used to have has gone. And that's a sad thing, because people didn't know they had. Very easy. I'll make this analogy before, and I think I've made it with you before now. My drawing room is full of knickknacks. It's full packed full of. It's got plastic gondolas when we were in Venice, rubbish. But it's got solid silver snuff boxes over here, inherited from great Uncle Sid or whatever it happens to be. The whole dining room is full of that kind of shit. I expect it's probably the same sort of thing. We collect shit, don't we? Now, if somebody came in and started to just palm a few stuff, at one of my drinks parties, if they could actually stand up when they left, which most of them can't, but they can actually palm stuff like that. I would probably say to Mrs. B in 2 years' time, do you know what happened to those silver snuff boxes that used to be? Where did they go? She says, I don't know. If you don't know, I don't know. Where you ever put them, that kind of thing. Wives, you lot say to us, well, you must know, you put it there, all that. So, of course, they can take stuff. Now, it's the same with the Constitution and your rights under English law. If you've brought up 2 generations, and we have 2 generations now, so anybody who is 20 and anybody who is 40 has absolutely no idea whatsoever what their inherited stewardship of rights are. They don't know. They don't know because they haven't been taught. And so they're not educated. And I include Cameron, who was in America being interviewed, and the subject of Magna Carta came up. He didn't know the date. He couldn't tell you what it implied. He couldn't say what had come from that in the Middle Ages, and so on and so forth. He got a first at Oxford in PPE. Now, we all know that's a piss artist course. It doesn't really mean anything. PPE, believe me, I know, is a joke. Now, if you're reading sort of physics or English literature or something, it's different. But I mean, PPE, the whole point of reading PPE at Oxford is to get pissed and have fun. Great. Nobody's more in favour of that kind of thing than me. But when you've got an English Prime Minister who's ex-Eton and ex-Oxford, who cannot on an American TV show discuss Magna Carta, we know we have sunk to an all-time low.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the thing about the education system and where we sit right now politically, when kids are at school, they should be taught the basics. They should be taught, especially when they're coming up to school leaver age, which God knows what it is now, is about 28.
Yeah.
I left at 16. But my mother taught me what a mortgage was. I knew what a bank account was. I definitely knew what a red reminder bill was. In fact, I knew that you didn't pay bills till you got your final demand because they were all stacked behind the clock. And that was one of the motivations for me to look at that clock and think, I'm not living like this when I leave home. No way. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to have a pile of bills I can't pay. I remember thinking like that, and that spurred me on to, instead of leaving school and just getting a job and going out enjoying myself, I did leave school. I had a job, but I also had a job in a pub. I had a job unpacking on a fruit stall. I did whatever it took to get extra money coming in. And the trouble is, nobody teaches kids how to run a bank account. Nobody teaches a child that, look, when you start running your own home, or even as a teenager living at home with your parents, if you overdraw at the bank, they'll write a letter to you to tell you you're overdrawn. They'll charge you 25 quid for that. And if you don't take any notice of it, they'll charge you another 25 quid for the next one and interest on the money you've took off them without authority, and then they'll stop your card. So you need to keep within the working realms of the bank. And if you need to go over that limit for some reason, you need to inform them. Then it's down to the manager to say, oh, right, okay, we know you're going to need an extra 100 quid. We'll allow that in this instance. Let us know when you're back in credit. You need to show them how to communicate with these authority figures. Obviously, it gets worse and worse as everything's going online. But nevertheless, these protections can be put in place with education. Instead, they'd rather talk to a child with low self-esteem, who's probably spotty and fat, and there's a number of issues going on, including raging hormones that's somehow making it want to get sexual and nobody wants it for some reason. Oh, let's sit them down with a pastoral advisor and talk about chopping your dick off, because that's a much better method to make you feel better about yourself. No mention of the skin graft that might not heal properly because it's going right past the epidermis, right down as far as it can go till you can see veins. And that might take some time to heal and will be extremely painful. Do you really want that? Oh no, let's talk about it like it's the end goal, that is utopia. And this is where we're going wrong. We've got no priorities. We've got drag queens in schools telling stories. The world, people used to say, it's the road to hell. No, I think this is the destination. We're on it. Everything's upside down. It's like somebody's took the planet and opened the bag and shook everything out, and nothing's landed where it should be, because we've got the wrong people with the power, the wrong people with the money, philanthropists that don't actually philanth. All they do is move money from this pocket to that pocket, which really just gives them tax advantages. It's still their money as long as they give 3% away every year, and they treat it as a ceiling. They never give more than 3%. Have you noticed? Bill Gates never gives more than 3% to charity, despite being worth billions and billions. Give 15%, Bill. Go wild. But no, they never do it. They treat it like a ceiling instead of a starting block. So we've got all these things going on. And in the meantime, your average family has to hope they can afford to pay the mortgage, look at the unfathomable gas bills that come from different suppliers, try and be talked into a heat pump they'll never afford, that they won't even work unless they insulate walls, redo the windows, floors, ceilings, the lot, and add extra radiator. It's going to cost them £20,000 and take them 2 decades to catch up, and it still won't be a warm house unless it's been purpose-built for a heat pump. We've got people telling you that putting plastic all over fields is green. How anybody can ever think that is beyond me. And getting government taxes to create this false utopia. There isn't one millionaire in the climate industry that hasn't made their millions from getting subsidies. They don't make it from wind, and they don't make it from green energy. They make it from subsidies, and subsidies come from the government, and the government don't create anything. They only have money from the taxpayer. So we've created millionaires in an industry that's telling us lies.
I'm afraid you're absolutely right. And of course, they're big Dale Vince, isn't it? I think I can't remember, but there's 1 or 2 of them, isn't it, that give all these big checks to. What was the first thing that happened with when Miliband came in? It's wind turbines. Well, the guy gave £3 million to the Labour Party. What does he do? He builds wind turbines. In fact, I just got you may have seen this. I don't know whether you've seen this. Yeah, Ed Miliband has cost. I do this because I was just on the budget, talking about the budget of somebody else earlier on this morning. Ed Miliband has committed $8 billion to energy, 22 billion to carbon capture. That's £1,500 per household. So what he's saying is, we've got a black hole, we've got to amend the thing. Well, look, just a minute. If you shot Ed Miliband, that'll probably get me locked up. You'd have saved $8 billion. You could give every woman who's worked all her life a pension at 65 if he got shot of Ed Miliband. Carbon capture, that's just digging bloody holes in the ground, isn't it? We've got railways to nowhere. Aircraft carriers, which are huge fat targets floating around, which have been obsolete since Okinawa. The reason they stay in the Western Mediterranean is because the Houthis, the guys with a bunch of spears, basically, and a few Iranian missiles, could sink them. So they have to step. They cost us billions. What a waste of time all that was. 5% of the public sector, and what nobody actually thinks about, not just 5% of the public sector, index-linked pensions. That is going to cost round about £500 billion 10 years down the road. But nobody talks about it because your average journalist, your average financial journalist or political journalist, is thick. So you've got Laura Cheeseburger at the BBC. She's not going to rock the boat. She's on 300 grand a year out of the public till. She's not going to put anybody on the rack, is she?
No.
I mean, the fact that nobody watches the BBC or Sky News closing now, but everybody's got their hand in the till. The only people who get screwed are the British indigenous white working class, middle class now. It's moving up the tree. And one day, the upper middle class, the sort of people I used to have, don't talk to me now, but the sort of people who used to have dinner parties with me, who were at Oxford, and they're terribly, Oxford and all that kind of thing, who are really just as thick as anything. I've got a window cleaner. He's cleverer than most of my Oxford friends. Miles cleverer. Because they think Oxford, they think on rails, don't they? They think, they think on rails. Stupid people. And of course, they're all in the civil service.
Yeah, institutionalized thinkers. They don't critically think about anything. They wait for a piece of paper to come from someone higher up the food chain than them. And if it says we've got to go and wear a mask in the National Health, despite the fact the packaging says it's not suitable for viruses,
I know.
they still put it on.
I know. And I don't know about this. This is on a far more nasty and serious note. The number of I'm 75 next week, but I mean, okay, so I would expect to be going to a few funerals, wouldn't I? Because a lot of my mates are dropping off their perch. But I've got a lot of friends and acquaintances and people who are dropping off their perch at 60 or very poorly at 60, and they all have one thing in common: they all jabbed and boosted. And these people, now here's the problem we've got, June, you and I trying to get the message across. They still don't join the dots. We've got two mates, quite close mates, who are about 60 years old, who were perfectly fit and healthy until they had all the jabs and the booster. They're all now getting treatment for cardiac problems. They're all getting cardiac problems. And all that. But they haven't gone, oh my goodness me, what a silly sod I was with all those jabs and the booster. And there's an 800% increase in autism for kids. And there's, these massive increases and all these things. But they're not going, oh gosh,
No,
I was down in my local town. They're queuing up to get jabbed again.
I know. I can't believe the fact that the other thing, I've got people I know personally. I've got friends who had cancer in remission. In fact, leukemia, steadily controlled for 10 years on one drug. No problem. Now they can't stabilize her and they keep trying different things. She's very poorly. I've got another guy with a different form of leukemia. Same thing. A 36-year-old with a pacemaker fitted who's never drunk or smoked, doesn't carry any excess weight, has been physically fit, could walk Helvellyn, with a pacemaker in. So you've got all these health issues. And obviously with having such a big following, I read my messages, I look at them. And when I used to put things on about the rollout, about whether it was safe, I don't tell anybody what to do. I just put information out to say, you need to make your decision from an informed platform. And if the media aren't telling you the information, you're not making it from an informed platform. And the media didn't. They withheld it. And then they lied about it. They said, take it to protect Granny when it hadn't even been tested for transmission. How much further back do you want to go? Now, when I used to put things on like that, my Facebook response would be minimal. I'd get 40 likes. It would go way down. Now, when I'm putting things on like that, I'm getting 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, because Facebook's different to Twitter. It's not as active. But Facebook's much better for doing a survey. And that is because many of the people who did the right thing and rolled the sleeve up are now either suffering themselves, have relatives, neighbours, friends and family members, colleagues at work with problems. One office, 22 people in one office, 7 of them have heart issues. They're under 50.
Absolutely. And of course, when was the last time on public sector broadcasting, public service broadcasting, did you see one of the senior oncologists being interviewed telling us all this? Yeah. That it's gone up by hundreds of percentage points. These guys do it for a living. They know there's something wrong. Yeah. They know it's all wrong, but they're not on TV. So what you do, it's the same with climate change. You get Emma Thompson or Harrison Ford telling you all about it, or King Charles III telling you all about it. Why don't we get some experts? Do you know there are thousands and thousands of climate scientists across the globe, highly qualified people from all sorts of universities, saying it's all total and utter bollocks, but you won't ever see them on TV.
No, because it's all about funding. I know someone who was working for a big brewery, and they wanted to, there was a challenge about, drinking excessively was bad for your health. So they employed some scientists to do some research. And what people forget is quite often these scientific briefs are given to universities and scientists, and the brief will be basically laying out the result that they want. They'll say, look, this is what we want to achieve. We want this to look like that. And the research will be modelled around getting to that result, not looking for answers, but getting to that result, because the funding on something else that they're working on is dependent on coming up with that result. And
you're absolutely right.
When you get someone like Professor Angus Dalgleish, a leading oncologist, begging the government, he did a piece to camera, it was 2 minutes long, begging the government to look at the excess and aggressive cancers that were coming forward. Not one media outlet, including GB News, picked up on it. Nobody was interested because they're all paying the piper. You know, they don't want to affect their advertising base, because the trouble is the government are still one of the main advertisers. People forget that the government has spent billions this last 3 years with media companies. And of course, they own the BBC, and Ofcom works in their favour. So this information that you and I see, which has made us come to our decision making, isn't getting out to the wider public, because unless it comes on that telly, and this is why Nigel Farage is an important figure, because of his GB News slot, the way he rationally projects information, and the fact he's now in politics, because it gets in the home. It is coming to the home, and people watching me and you now, they're people who are already disenfranchised with the media and are looking for answers. But there's millions and millions out there who think everything's okay and just wonder why things are going wrong. And unless you can get information to them through that TV, it's a long slog.
Yeah, I just your point on the scientists, sponsored scientists, made me laugh, because it reminded me, would you believe, of Cook Sergeant in the army many years ago when I was a young officer. There was Cook Sergeant Murphy, his name was, big fat bloke with tattoos. Not the most hygienic individual, but he was a cook sergeant. They don't do that now. It's all wonderful today. But in those days, of course, they didn't. And this greasy bugger was stirring up this bloody tureen of whatever it was. And it was soup, I think. It was soup. It was a cold day on the ranges, you know, up in the north of Yorkshire somewhere. And he's stirring it around. And a young soldier, you know, I think he's probably about 18, all spotty, and somebody says, "What's a soup? What's a soup, Sarge?" And he stirs it and he looks down at that and he says, "What do you want it to be?"
Exactly.
That's what scientists do, don't they? Here's the grant. Okay, what conclusion do you want us to come to?
Yeah, that's it.
The thing is that we'll wind up on this because time is marching on, as it always does when we're chatting. It's like police who tried to cause trouble with that peaceful crowd on Saturday. It's like these scientists who are in the pocket of big business, doctors in the pocket of big pharma. What happened to them when they get home at night and their kids say, "What did you do today, Dad?" How do they cope with their kids? What's their problem? Are they all sociopaths, or have they just given up? Now they pay the mortgage, they pay the college fees for the kids, they buy the new car, don't engage, just turn into a zombie and don't talk about it. Yeah. But these guys, where's their self-respect? Exactly. Where is their self-respect?
It's not present, is it? It's just not there. It's just not there. They don't have it. You know, I've quite often said when people are splitting up in a marriage, they'll say, "Oh, we're splitting up, but we get on well. You know, there's no animosity." And I go, "Oh, have you sorted money out?" Yeah. Come back and tell me that when you've sorted money out. Tell me that. No, but it's really nice, and he understands. Oh, okay then. Well, tell me when you've got your nice eye through and you've sorted your money out, tell me what you think. And they're still raging at each other after the fact, because you don't know the price of an individual until you discuss the money with them. You know, it's like that old saying, is it? Where there's a will, there's a relative. Who gets Nana's house? At least these days, we know the Labour government will end up getting it because it'll go in care home.
If there's anything left at all, yeah. It's
Anyway, the good thing is, Godfrey, by the time I need a care home, I'll probably be incarcerated in one of Keir Starmer's gaols.
Well, at least you get 3 meals a day, and better 3 meals a day, and better access to healthcare.
Yeah.
And a job in the library.
Yeah. And flinging my excrement at a well-built orderly, saying, "Nurse, she's on the pot again, gathering ammunition. Take that for all the years you didn't listen to me." Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Anyway, I gave some advice on a previous. Somebody asked me some parting shots, as it were, and you know, before we close down, and I said yes. I think the parting shot. We've got the budget on Thursday. Oh no, budget on Wednesday. My recommendation to both our viewers is to, at this coming weekend, get totally and utterly shit-faced, drink yourself to a standstill, forget all about it, and sort it out Monday morning.
Yeah. Somebody said to me about the budget, what precautions, it was in another podcast, I was one of a couple of guests, what precautions have you taken for the, preparing for the budget? I said, well, I've just stocked up on a shed load of booze and fags, filled all my cars up with juice. And she said, but June, you don't smoke. I said, yeah, but I'll be able to sell them after the budget. Well, in my little side earner.
Marvelous. Well, Jude, it's lovely to talk to you. Breath of fresh air. I might come and knock on your door one day. We're big goers to the Lake District and fell walkers, and we can swing past your place. Don't turn the lights out and draw the curtains, because I'll know you're there.
You've been made very welcome.
Okay, my dear lady.
See you later.
Okay. Toodle-pips. Bye.
Bye.
As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research-based, and I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So, surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.